everybody. So we'll give people a minute or two to trickle in, and then we will get this thing started. So as we're waiting on people to drop in, just want to go ahead and mention you should have gotten an email today from a no reply at CourseStack that gave you access to our lab environment. I would say if you haven't done so already, go ahead and click that and get it spun up and running. The course materials will be there. You'll be able to access the lab, play through the content, and I'll share a screen here in a few. We'll get some slides going, and the goal here is a few hours of cool, interesting kind of thought process going through CTI, how to get started, learning how to do the whole thing. So all in all, should be a good time. This one was fun the one time I've run it previously. I've got some interesting stuff for you guys today. Let's see, I'll give it one more minute before I start. All right, here we go. Let's do the thing. So, hi, hey, hello again. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us. If you didn't hear me prior, you should have gotten an email from No Reply at CourseStack that includes a access link to today's workshop environment and lab manual and everything. This is going to be kind of our play here on getting you started with CTI, being able to make it useful and start your own potential program and just overall learn some of these concepts. I know threat intelligence is kind of a pretty broad topic, so this one's going to kind of be level set on getting you started. But have no fear if you're kind of a seasoned CTI analyst or you've done some of these kind of processes before, I'm sure there'll still be something new and interesting in here that you guys can take from it. Okay, yeah, it's not trouble at all, Noah. Jared, can you add Noah to the student list in CoreStack? Noah, just send us a message with your email address and we'll make sure you get that invite link. So with that in mind, let's get started. Who am I? Hey, I'm Trey. I'm sure you guys have seen my face before if you've ever watched any of the content that's came from Scythe here in the last few years. I'm the professional services lead of SCYTHE Labs, and me and my team, along with Jared and some of the others you've seen in the past, develop all of our content, these free workshops and training, all kinds of different products and services and fun stuff that we do here at Scythe. Background 17 plus years in IT and cyber as a whole. Basically, if it's ever had an IP address, I've had to work with it at some point in time. So it's kind of my background and a little bit of everything. If you would like to connect, my socials are down there. Feel free to reach out to me. I like having interesting conversations when it comes to this kind of content. Jared, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, for sure. Hey, nice to see everyone joining up today. My name is Jared. I'm an adversary emulation engineer here at Scythe. Focused on the building of the threats and detections that we do here. In the past, I've worked in threat hunting, IR, purple teaming, and some software development related to SIMSOAR.
All right. So with the mandatory intros out of the way, let's get into what are we talking about today. So we'll do a quick little dive into what cyber threat intelligence is, kind of some of the requirements, what the process looks like. From there, we'll move into actually starting to build our own process and go through some of these steps. Do a bit of introspection, kind of taking a look in the mirror to define our organization, or at least the fictitious one that we've built out for you guys in the course itself. And then we'll turn and have you guys start collecting and parsing out some data and making it useful. And then all that leading into actually putting it to use. You've been able to generate useful, actionable intelligence and reports that people can use. So we'll walk through all of this today, and you guys will have a chance to do each little piece and part of the process as we go. Sound good? All right. Before I move further anymore, has anyone currently in the workshop not gotten an email from CoreStack with access to the lab environment? If you haven't, please shoot us a message in the webinar chat with your email address and we'll make sure we get you added so you can participate. So let's move on then. So what is cyber intelligence anyway, and why do we really care? David, can you drop your email in the chat for host and panelists so we can get you added? Thank you. So CTI in and of itself, this is basically us collecting data as a whole, and it's a structured collection and analysis of that data so that we can overall utilize it and disseminate it to our teams and the people that actually need it. The whole goal here is researching, analyzing, since we're focusing on cyber threats that we might face in this domain. That traditional CTI is going to include things like just generalized threat actor information, all the way down to IOCs, indicators of compromise, things you've seen before, IP addresses, domain names. But more importantly, the kind of things that we're thinking about is going to be the context behind it, their behaviors, why they're doing what they're doing, and how they're targeting you and why they're targeting you. So anything that would potentially be useful in identifying, recognizing cyber campaigns or intrusions and being able to thwart it is kind of the goal and what we're looking at when we think about CTI here. This intelligence in itself, it has to be based in fact. It's going to be evidence-based information, and we want it to be continuous and repeatable. We want this to be something that's usable and not just us generating more output for no real reason. So from a blue team side, when we think about these things, you're going to be interested more in this kind of threat intelligence or information as a whole when it comes to incident response, threat hunting, things like that, or to help actually drive and influence business decisions and overall operations within your organization. From the more, let's say, red purplish side, when we're thinking about threat intelligence, we're looking at this more from being able to understand the threats that are out there, the threats other organizations may face, so that we may be able to utilize and emulate those behaviors in TTPs as a whole and help them improve their defenses. So I know you guys have all heard that coin term before, threat-informed defense. That's kind of what we're thinking about here if you look at it from both sides. So I've used that term actionable a couple times. What we're talking about here are these kind of key concepts that you see here on the screen. We want the information that we're generating and we're disseminating to our organization or to our actual users to be relevant, like it needs to pertain to the decisions or to the operations that are currently being made and had. It needs to be accurate as a whole. It needs to be based in reliable and verifiable data. Timeliness is a big thing. Getting out information, disseminating it fast so that it's actually actionable and usable is the key here, right? Getting that same information, but putting it out 6 weeks later after you've already kind of been breached isn't really helpful. It's nice to know after the fact to help with IR, but it won't help you while you're in the thick of it, right? Then lastly, thinking about clarity and specificity. We want it to be clear and understandable. These insights need to be actually usable from our customers or from the people we're providing it to. So you want it to be not necessarily simple, but you want it to be clear. And then it needs to include detailed guidance as well, not just oh, well, we saw them doing a thing. It's kind of bad. You should look into that. Well, no, like give them a little bit more information, right? Like that detailed guidance needs to help them determine, okay, what should we do? What's our courses of actions? What potential steps can we take to not just validate that information or intelligence you're getting, but put it to use? So, quick dive into purpose. So, overall, this is kind of the thing I think that gets overlooked. People get so deep into the who's and why's and IOCs that they really forget the overall purpose of threat intelligence and what it's trying to do. And I would say key and first and foremost is it's there to help support that strategic decision making. Your threat intelligence, this is kind of the eyes and ears of your proactive defense strategy and your overall risk posture, right? You need to understand the context of the threats you're facing, how it could potentially affect you, the potential impact if something does happen, and why they would target you in the first place. All of that can help support the strategy of the organization, which is going to disseminate down into everything else you do and affect operations as a whole. We want these actionable insights into this organization's overall risk level done and helped by identifying these threats, right? It's going to directly align with your business operations. It's going to align with the industry's landscape, and it's going to help you from a strategic perspective play a big role in prioritizing your resources. So time, manpower, money, all of those different things you need to make a business run, right? We can utilize it from this purpose also to help us anticipate and neutralize threats, right? If you understand who you are as an organization, your threat profile, the assets you have and that are under your control, and the potential, let's say, crown jewels or IP that you have that someone else would want, it can help you kind of get ahead of the curve and anticipate that threat. Then, lastly, just enabling that proactive defense as a whole. If you can raise your readiness levels, improve your security operations, and be able to not just understand the threats that you're hunting for in your environment, but be able to get ahead of that and test effectively before something bad actually happens to ensure you could see it when bad really does come. So I know I'm flying through these kind of quick. I like to talk through the slides. I want to ensure you guys get as much time as possible to run through kind of the hands-on pieces and parts of this. Did anybody have any questions so far over kind of how we would define threat intelligence, its purpose, things like that? Cool. So that was a quick high-level overview. Let's talk about some of the different types of CTI. Realistically, we can pare it down into three separate buckets. I know there's a lot of debate out there in, X, Twitterverse, Blue Sky, pick your social media platform of choice. But in the community, this is anywhere from 3 to 5 buckets. I tend to lean on keeping it a little more simple and looking at it from this perspective. First off, you've got the category of like strategic threat intelligence. This is kind of focused on our long-term planning here, right? This is going to help drive the overall operations and ensure you can meet the operational and strategic goals of your organization. These are going to be kind of like high-level reports. You're briefing executives, C-level, those kind of people that have influence over the organization and how it's going to run. This also includes things like your risk assessments, how these things could potentially impact the org. It's going to help you answer kind of questions like what's the risk of us potentially acquiring a new company based in a certain, say, country or market? Your audience, when you think about it, when you're answering those kind of questions and what you're trying to help, I think about these more as like the thinkers, if you want to keep it simple, right? Big, broad picture. The information you provide them will help them make overall strategy decisions that are going to affect operations, which is our next type of CTI. This is going to be a little more detailed reporting. This is helping to support specific campaigns. It's going to provide relevant and actionable intel that is based around, say, your actual goal, your infrastructure, the security operations you're running, or even things such as like when you're in the middle of incident response and the way you share these overall details, reports, and plans with your other lines of business. So when we think about operational CTI, this is going to help us kind of answer those questions like, well, what threat groups are likely to target our organization? That's, kind of taking that look in the mirror and trying to understand who we are to know who would target us. When you think about the audience for operational, I look at this as more as like that battle space commander, right? Like company level, this is a mid-level manager, maybe a team lead, someone like that. So to keep that simple, I think the planners. So strategic is kind of the thinkers, operational being the planners, leaving us at technical as that lowest level of CTI that you're going to collect and disseminate. These are more of the doers. So you're thinking like that DCO analyst, you're thinking your guys that are actually like boots on the ground, right? Hands on keyboard, doing the day-to-day work, responding to all of the different events and ensuring that operations continue and run. This tactical CTI is addressing those like immediate threats, and often this is like a real-time kind of thing. It was like feed or support security operations where you're monitoring, analyzing threat data, the telemetry you're getting, and you're bouncing all of that off of these indicators of compromise that you're sharing, along with a knowledge of attack patterns, using all of that together to be able to respond and prevent potential attacks. This kind of threat intelligence is going to kind of help us answer questions in the form of, say, like, what behavioral analytics can we write to best identify a specific malicious activity or behavior? Does this make sense to you guys? So strategic, operational, tactical, each different level is going to be a different kind of product, right? This intelligence has a bunch of different use cases. It's going to be in different formats. The kind of information you would feed, say, a C level or an executive to help them make a business operation decision isn't going to be the same thing you're trying to feed down to your tactical personnel that are actively hands-on keyboard. Thank you, Noah. That's much appreciated. Yeah, we try here. Okay, so moving on, let's talk use cases now to these different types of threat intelligence. When we're thinking on the tactical level, so think like threat feeds, real-time alerts, things you're getting, not just like externally or from your CTI platform of choice or your security vendors, but also the stuff that's populating in your security tool. And could be like stuff from automated malware analysis, your logs, any kind of traffic filtering, stuff you have happening in the environment already. All of those are the different kind of use cases for CTI and where that information is going to go and come from. From an operational perspective, we're thinking more of a use case around, say, threat hunting, how you're going to prioritize patching in your environment and running updates, your overall operational reporting in the organization, maybe how you run incident response or how you respond to any one particular incident. And then lastly, like threat profiling, trying to understand what's going on in the overall scope. Sorry, one second. All right. And then lastly, with strategic, this is more, say, surrounding like risk analysis when it comes to, say, people, process, procedures, maybe a new purchase the organization is going to make, maybe a new piece of hardware or platform they want to adopt. Overall strategy review, like are we working in the right direction when it comes to our security postures or something new we should be doing? The overall threat research. So think of it as like your marching orders as a whole. What are you going to do? What do you have to work with? And how are you going to accomplish it? And then lastly, business operations. That strategic CTI is going to help support your other ops in the environment, not just you from a security perspective. So I know that was a quick spam through some slides. So let's do something a little more fun and interactive up to this point. If we hop into Core Stack, let me pull mine up real fast. I'll step you through that real quick, and then we'll go through a little lab where we'll analyze a couple different pieces of threat intelligence. So what we're going to look at, I want you guys to take, let's say, 15 minutes and then I'll check in with you. We're going to go through this introduction piece here. Just shows you what you have in the environment, where all it sits. You also have access from that Unicorn host in your systems. In the Google Chrome browser, there's going to be some bookmarks for you for useful websites, access to like a MISP instance and a few other things. And then as you look through familiarization, if you've never used CoreStack before, there's just a quick little video explaining where everything's at and how to use it. After you finish getting started, we're going to do this first section under CTI 101, exploring different types of CTI. This has got a quick breakdown, again, of what we just discussed, what everything we went over. And then it's kind of got a call to action here. I want you guys to explore a couple different reports and look them over. The goal here is just take a few minutes, look at each article, take note of the information that's included in them, the style of writing, the audience you think it's being projected towards, and let's come up with our own ideas of where we think from a CTI use case or type each one of these articles falls into, okay? After about 15 minutes or so, we'll discuss it kind of as a group. Krunal, does the system credits expire after the event ends? So with this being a live event, yes, the system credits are keyed directly to the amount of time we have for the event. The good news here is I put enough credits for this to run another hour after this workshop ends today. So you'll have more time to explore and play around in the environment. Did you guys have any questions about the upcoming task, what we're trying to accomplish right here before I put you guys on time? Okay, so yeah, take a quick look at these three references. Let me know what you guys think about them. Once time is up, we'll kind of talk through them as a group. So it is 13:22 now. I'll probably check in with you guys again at 13:40. Sound good? Okay, how's everybody doing? Everybody read through the articles or need more time? For those of you just joining us, we're going through the first section of the lab exercise, looking at a couple different articles of threat intelligence and trying to determine what type of CTI it is and how they differentiate from each other. All right, cool. So go ahead and stop this then. All right. So when looking at the articles I gave you guys, what all did you notice? Is there any one that sticks out as a clear, specific kind of threat intelligence report to you? Did anyone notice a difference in tone or the way it was written for a particular audience in them? Cool. So what I provided for you guys, you'll notice, oh, here we go. Sherry 038A. Sherry, that would be correct. That would how I would look at it. It's a very good intro and opener for a strategic level piece of threat intelligence. Kind of a key factor there being this overall initial executive summary at the top. It's a very good kind of, hey, this is what we're seeing, this is what we're doing. All of these people have talked about it. Here's some potential recommendations for you. So, Scott, that's actually a great call out. I was kind of hoping you guys would see that and pay attention to it or someone say something. For two of the links I actually gave you, it was the same exact article. There's a reason for that. It was not a slip up or a mistake. I actually feel that this first article, the one talking about PRC state-sponsored actors compromise and maintain persistent access to critical infrastructure, is a great example of strategic and operational threat intelligence. But kind of in reality, it covers the gamut for all three different types. It's a very well written and extensive article. Primarily, though, I would say its focus is there more into the strategic and operational realm. For Ibrahim Assi CISA was general. All three links actually, or yeah, all three links actually came from CISA and their different cybersecurity advisories that they put out. Did it copy weird for you guys on the third link? Sorry about that. Let's see. Oh yeah, it did. Sorry about that. Markdown made an oopsie there. Yeah, if you pull lab off of the end of there, you'll actually get a good article. So let's look through this first one real quick. When we see this, the overall, like the summary and tone, especially in the beginning, is very much geared towards kind of like high level thought process. This is who we are. This is what we're seeing. Here's some of the stuff you could do. Screen just flashed. You guys can still see my screen, correct? Cool. Okay. So yeah, that the information that's kind of identified here very much kind of fits into that niche or that realm. It can help drive operations as a whole. It can help with decision making and determining like, is this threat actor potentially a problem for us? They do give you some good context in here that could potentially be used in incident response or threat hunting in general, especially around like how they're doing user enumeration and lateral movement. All in all, there's a little bit of everything sprinkled throughout this document. But I would say this is kind of one of the great examples of how CTI could be and how they managed to hit multiple different audiences with one document. The other one, yep, Correct. That's where these would apply for it there. And then the last one, the Stop Ransomware, the 060A article, that one's talking about Phobos ransomware. And you'll notice this one's a lot more precise. Yep, we'll see you back here in a few, Chris. Thank you. It's a lot more concise. It's very much, hey, this is what we're seeing. Here's how you define it. Here's the technical details of what we know. They kind of break down the different phases of the kill chain and what they've observed, what they've seen them using, kind of behaviors, any kind of artifacts or potential IOCs you could utilize. Then they give you a quick list of them and what they are. There's not a lot here that would support an overall, say, business decisions being made or overall strategy for your organization. This is a great example of something you could use as like a quick threat hunting reference or a way to do some quick checks or looking at it from an incident response perspective. So I liked this article and thought it was a good one to show you. It's not an accident that these both came from SCYTHE. I'll talk a bit more on it here a bit later, but the information they've been putting out has just been excellent, and they were the easiest ones to give you a couple good ideas of what they look like. Did anybody have any questions throughout this exercise on what we were trying to do here? See, Noah says, yeah, the third's very useful for threat hunters and detection engineers and purple teamers. Yeah, this third one is a great example, especially from a purple perspective, of something that's actionable. We could use this to recreate these observations in this campaign and what they had ran. We can take this information, turn it into, say, a threat emulation campaign, and actually utilize this in our environments with these behaviors to see if we can alert and detect and stop these different TTPs. So this was a really cool article for that. You'll notice in the Volt Typhoon one, there's actually a lot of that in here as well. They give you a good kind of like operational breakdown of stuff you could use for threat hunting or just general concepts. But then towards the end, they dive into like specifically how they were doing things. They give you some command line events that you can look at or look for. There's a lot of observable and like actionable intelligence in this document as well. Like I said, it's a good overall, all-encompassing threat intelligence article. So that was our first little hands-on exercise. I'm going to have a couple of these for you guys every couple slides. I don't want to death by PowerPoint you. I'd rather you guys think and interpret it on your own and get used to doing this process. The whole point is to reinforce these behaviors within you and your team so that you guys can go through the whole CTI process and it'll feel organic. Which, speaking of, let's get back to our next one or two slides. And we just so happen to be talking about CTI process. Let's see, Noah saying, yeah, that's a good example of one that contains info for building signatures, detections, and hunts while still being mostly comprehensible to people understanding from a strategic level. Yeah, exactly. No, it's overall a great article. So the CTI process, this whole kind of circle, this, like we said, this is a continuous and repeatable thing that we want to do. And you need to kind of follow it in this pattern because it's all going to influence and drive what happens next. Obviously, we start at direction when we're thinking about CTI as a process. We've got to define what's the purpose, what are our goals for starting up a CTI program or this specific operation for collection. Once we can do that, we need to define, okay, what's that threat look like? What are we most afraid of? What are we concerned with? And where are we going to find that, or how are we going to find that? Once we've done that, we've defined what our direction is, what our purpose, goal, got our marching orders. We move into the actual collection phase, right? Where you can go dig through any open or closed source resources we have. From the open perspective, I really like SCYTHE, Unit 42, Elastic Security Blog. There's a bunch of others, but off the top of my head, those are a few great ones that I've utilized. And we'll talk more about resources here in a bit. But the one thing I do think a lot of people overlook is they don't look internally as well. Like your logs have data, they have information and can paint a picture for you. So that's a great place to collect and look through your historical data. Once we've done our collection, we've got to take all of this kind of raw data or intelligence that we have and parse it and turn it into something actionable, right? We're going to take it, process it, try to see if we can understand what's happening in it and distill out what we care about and get rid of the rest. Once we can do our analysis and kind of start painting a picture that meets that overall direction and goal we were trying to hit, we're going to provide that and disseminate it out to our teams that are utilizing it. We're going to actually give them some form of a product that they can utilize. This is kind of the whole point here, right? You can go through CTI, you can stand up a whole team, but if no one's getting the information that you're distilling out and you're processing, it's not really doing anything for you, right? You're just kind of eating up some storage space with documents for no reason. Got to ensure that that analysis is getting translated into a format that's suitable for your teams and for your audience. It's what they're asking for. You're being clear, concise, and evidence driven. Again, I want to reinforce that it has to be based in facts. Sometimes you're going to have to potentially make assumptions, potentially fill in a gap, but you don't do so lightly. You need to ensure that you're doing that from a vantage point of experience and understanding of the threat that you're facing as a whole, not just well, I think they would have done this. You should have high confidence and you should be able to explain why you're filling in that gap in that direction. So we disseminate it, and I would say probably the most important step after that is this whole feedback and improve piece, right? The end goal here was to help improve your operations as a security team. So you want to ensure you're in constant communication with those teams. You're doing debriefs with them to see like, hey, did what I provide you actually give you some kind of value? Did it work for you? Is there something else you would have wanted to see, maybe in a different way, so that you can rework it and try again? Like we said, this is a continuous process. So this should just be a constant feedback loop for you and the teams that are utilizing this information you're collecting and disseminating. Is this making sense for everyone? Okay. So that's the overall CTI process in a nutshell. I know that's a lot going on here. This course is going to kind of feel like an inch deep, a mile wide, because in reality, cyber threat intelligence as an overarching concept is huge. There's so much that can go into this. Like we could talk through an easy day each on the individual pieces and parts of the process as a whole. So I wanted to ensure you guys had the bare minimum and understanding to be able to at least start your own kind of CTI operations as you're going into this. So moving on, what are kind of the requirements that we have here? If I was to boil it down to a few small things, it comes down to the people, your processes, and your technology when we're thinking about the requirements for running a CTI program. When it comes to people, so being able to build a skilled team is not something you do quickly. It will take time. Even if you can assemble everybody overnight, it's going to take time to get everyone to have that right mix of skills and be able to mesh together and work in tandem and produce something that is usable and actionable. You're going to want those people to have kind of skills in, like in threat analysis, in critical thinking. You're going to want them to understand incident response, not just from a general perspective, but from your organizational perspective, how you guys do IR, how you threat hunt, and how your security operations works. That team is going to have to be able to collect, analyze, and act on this threat intelligence effectively. So you want to ensure that they understand everything they're looking at and talking at. You can't just kind of pull Joe Schmo off the street and hope that he can read and understand and collect data and give you something that's usable. The odds of that happening are low, right? This is going to kind of include a bit of investment in your team and in your people, right? It's going to be training and development. You're going to want to invest on ongoing training for them. And I mean, luckily for you guys, you're getting some of it, and in my opinion, some great CTI training for free right now. Things like this, there's people doing all kinds of different workshops, webinars, live streams, content that can help improve their process. Everybody knows something. You can always glean some good insights from them, especially in this field. The threats we're facing, they're going to constantly evolve, and your team is going to have to stay ahead of the curve if possible. At a minimum, they need to be abreast with those threats, understanding the current relevant TTPs and behaviors and tools that those teams or those threats are utilizing so that they could potentially help you get ahead of those threats or at least identify them when there is something wrong in your environment. So that's people. With processes, this very much kind of goes back into the CTI process, but it also is derived from your overall business process and operations as a whole. You're going to have to define or establish and define workflows. These workflows, you're going to have to be clear and objective, right? You're looking to collect, analyze, and act on this intelligence. So you need to have some kind of workflow that goes through all those three pieces, right? You're going to want to right off the bat be able to define like how are we collecting information, where are we getting it, how are we going to analyze it, and how are we going to communicate these findings to the relevant stakeholders. So this is kind of that boring but very much necessary piece. If you love to do documentation, this right here is right up your alley. SOPs, things like that that define everything that we need to do so you have consistency and reliability from a product perspective is where it falls in here. Me personally, I love thinking abstract, big picture, playing, experimenting, learning. I hate documenting. It is the worst for me. Sadly, I've had to get good at it, right? I can't be in this field or working in this kind of uh, seat without being able to clearly document and explain myself and my ideas and the concepts that we're working with. So, and then lastly, so that process needs to also define how are you going to integrate that CTI team and the products they're creating into security operations as a whole. You want to ensure that this is happening and that they're in constant communication and kind of blended because you don't want this to happen to where like your team becomes a silo, security ops becomes a silo, nobody talks to each other. You could be making the greatest product in the world, delivering them just clear, concise, actionable, and fast content, but they never see it because there's no lines of communication and no kind of camaraderie in place. I see it happen in a lot of organizations. So that whole kind of program goes to waste. You want to ensure that integration happens, right? Let's see. So Noah's saying like if you're hiring unicorns with a tremendous capability relative to the average professional, it's very likely you can start building a CTI program capability by starting with existing personnel who have already have some of that experience and training. Yes, you can. The thing here is we have to all take into account, right, is when you, I guess hiring, let's do a little tangent real quick on people and hiring. Can you hire a bunch of rock stars and hit the ground running and potentially build just an awesome team? Yes. But there's a couple things that come into play there, right? One, they might all be rock stars. Not everyone is as personable and open to working with others as some, right? So you might have rock stars on your team, but they can't effectively communicate and collaborate. So it kind of puts a bit of a bind in your team. But from a business operations perspective, if you start looking at just hiring all unicorns and people with 15 plus years experience that have been in the intelligence community and understand all of this and have a deep rooted knowledge and experience set, that often is going to cost dollar bucks, right? So now you're affecting budgets and the overall expenditure your company has. You want to ensure that that product you're putting out as a team can be justified by that expenditure, right? So in reality, I think it's like everything. You want a bit of variance in who you have on your team. Not everyone needs to be a seasoned professional. I personally have had a lot of luck, and I think there's a lot to be said for hiring in very talented and forward-thinking juniors and mid-level people, especially from the junior side. Those people just need a chance. And a lot of the times, I've seen some of the most unique thinkers come from that India because they're not corrupted. They haven't been in this field and developed all those bad habits, and they haven't seen all of the stuff we have over the last couple decades, right? So they're still kind of new, they're fresh eyes, and it'll change the game for you. And just my little rant and side tangent on hiring and things like that. But lastly, technology. How are you going to not only collect this, but where are you storing it? Where are you going to like harvest it and have it? Because it needs to, if it's something you're going to hold on to, something you're going to collect, analyze, and distill down, it needs to be repeatable, reusable, and searchable. You've got a couple different options here, right? You can invest time or you can invest money. Time kind of comes into that. Do I want to go the free 99 route and use some of the open source programs or create our own, right? It could be something as simple as you've just got a SharePoint where you keep a bunch of documents that have, just tab after tab after tab in a Excel sheet of all your IOCs and indicators and pivot tables and craziness like that, and PDFs where you basically just save all the advisories you ever read. It can be that simple, or you could use some programs like say MISP or OpenCTI. There are others that you can use to kind of help store. These are considered like threat intelligence platforms. We'll talk about a few here in a bit. Or you could do your own kind of like custom security orchestration, like using a SOAR solution, maybe using Confluence like a wiki. Internally, I tend to do something like that where we'll have our own internal wiki with not only the stuff we've read and we've interpreted, but the stuff we've built. The whole goal here is to be able to enable your team to actually aggregate and analyze the information and then be able to quickly disseminate it or share it with whoever they need to do. Ideally, you want it to integrate with your current defensive tool and security stack because all of that analytics you're already collecting and logging and having to store is a good spot to start. It's a good piece of usable, actionable intelligence realistically. So you want to be ensure that you're getting your feed from that, that you're also able to enrich that data that those security operators are getting to help better perform their duties. Make sense? And then lastly, there's a bunch of automation tools and things that are out there you can utilize to streamline your CTI process, whether that's in the collection and analysis piece or if that's in the actual reporting and dissemination. It comes up down to how you want to work, how much time, money, resources you have to devote to effectively building out that process. But that's what it kind of boils down to when it comes to requirements is that people, processes, technology. You guys have any questions over this? I know that was a lot and probably the most time we've spent on any one slide so far. I don't want to run ahead if you guys are still kind of pondering over this. Cool. Yeah, that's true. Thank you, Pedro. Yeah, I have it all the time. I work with a bunch of younger security professionals and college kids and high schooler kids, and I'm learning something new from them all of the time. They make me challenge my worldview quite a bit in this space, so it's really cool to see. After a while, you can kind of get jaded and think you've seen it all, and then they'll pull a nice little trick out of their hat on you. Okay, moving on. So we talked through what CTI is, everything that kind of goes into it, what that process looks like, and the requirements of starting up a process or a program when it comes to threat intelligence. Let's talk to like what's that actual good recipe for CTI, or in this case, the recipe for delicious CTI, right? So what we're looking at here is going to be everything that goes into making something actionable. First piece of this being asking the right questions. So we're focused on what's really important to us, what do we care about, and what are we wanting to protect? What kind of threats have we faced historically? Have we already been hit? Have we had to triage some breaches? Have we done IR? Do we have those reports? Even if you have stuff like prior risk assessments, pen tests, red team engagements, all of the reports from that is valuable intelligence for you because you at least have some kind of starting point and baseline for your overall security posture. You understand the tools and applications and hardware you're utilizing, so you can start building your picture around that. And then lastly, kind of taking a look in the mirror and trying to make sure you understand who you are so you know why someone would target you. Overall, you're going to want that CTI ingestion or like that process to be focused on your organization, right? If you're just collecting every threat feed known to man and everything that's out there, yeah, you've got a lot of data, but what are you really doing with it? Where are you going to start? What are you looking for? How do you even sift through it all and make it usable for you? It could be the greatest CTI in the world, but if you've got no real way or no real focus as you're going through it, it's just going to be a lot of reading. So realistically, we want to kind of take that introspective look at our organization, define that overall direction or what our marching orders were so that we know how our ingestion is going to work as a process. Some of the kind of key questions I'd like you guys to keep in mind as we go through this workshop and as you're reading other documents or trying to generate your own even after the fact is like, do you have any kind of information someone would care about, right? Does your organization maintain any kind of intellectual property? Do you collect PHI or PII from customers? Do you collect customer informations like, names, addresses, credit card info, anything in that perspective? That kind of information is going to kind of narrow your scope and key you in on who would potentially target you or who would care about it. Next, you're kind of it's like, understand who you are as a business. Do you conduct business in any contested regions or um, work in a region that's targeted by a specific threat for your vector or for your vertical, that will make a difference. You're going to want to ensure that you understand not only who you are, who would target you, but are you a part of someone else's overall supply chain that would make you a target or a potential compromise to get to them, right? There's always second and third order effects, especially here lately. There's been a lot of stuff in the news this year about people getting hit by a supply chain compromise. Some integration platform gets popped. That integration platform has access to a bunch of different things. Like I think it just happened here recently to Discord, if I remember correctly, not even a month ago. So there's really good precedent for understanding that and where you kind of fall in that pecking order. With these kind of threats, the things that you've seen in the past, understanding like, was it ransomware? Is it just a lot of phishing attempts? Is there any kind of insider threat going on? If you can understand what's previously occurred, you can kind of start seeing and spotting those patterns and gaps in your defenses and try to fix them. So when you think about threat intelligence, it may not always just come from a threat feed or an IOC feed. It could come from your physical security team. It could come from the help desk where they see there's just this one belligerent worker that's always trying to subvert controls or doing something they're not supposed to. Like all of that kind of stuff is still usable data, right? And then lastly, the one that kind of hits the most to say is like, what's your worst nightmare? Do you understand what the worst possible day at work looks like for you? If you can understand that, it can help you really define that scope and understand who you're focused on. By us being able to define that overall like threat landscape and what we think that looks like, we can focus our intelligence efforts within that area of concern. So we've now just taken this huge bubble of potential information and made it something that is actually usable. Not everything can be protected equally, so we need to focus on those assets that, like, if they are compromised, would potentially cause the most damage or give someone the access necessary to cause some kind of real impact to us. So yeah, no, I had mentioned, so seeing your organization like a threat actor is a huge part of that threat informed defense. And that is exactly right. That's a lot of the times why we interact with other organizations. They'll bring us in to be that threat actor for them. We're going to take a look at them as a whole, do our kind of research, look at it, and determine what's a threat to them and potential ways in and out. And we put that to the test to see if they can identify it, potentially stop it, or at a minimum, just respond to it properly. We do that quite a bit here at Scythe. So I know I talked a lot about asking the right questions, what those kind of questions could look like. Here's just kind of another concept of taking a look in the terminal. If I had to distill all of that down, your information, the regions you're in, the industries you're in, and the history is really kind of what matters the most. And by information, that was me talking about your IP, your PI, PHI, your crown jewels, all that stuff you really care about. Understanding your overall region that you're operating in paired with your industry or your market makes a difference. An example I typically like to use is, let's say I work in oil and gas, right? Maybe I'm in energy generation, but I'm working in the Midwest of the Americas. The potential threats I'm going to face or that would actually care about me are not the same as if I was, say, power generation in the Middle East or in Africa. It's a whole completely different side of the world. There's different interests and organizations vying for control in those areas. So the people that would potentially target us aren't going to be the same in both regions, even though we're in the same vertical. Does that make sense? The same thing can be said is like maybe just because we work in the Midwest of the Americas doesn't mean you're always going to face the same threats because of where you're at in that region. Energy, manufacturing, you're not going to face the same potential threat that, say, a hat maker in Denver is going to face. It's a whole different profile, whole different concept. So you've got to be able to take all of this in tandem to build that picture. And then lastly, I know I'm going to harp on it, and I'm going to keep saying this over and over again because people overlook it all of the time. What historical data do you have? Where have you been targeted before? What's worked? What hasn't? And have you done anything to fix that? It's a great place to start from an intelligence perspective. Yeah, no, it really does. If you wanted to, like, from an operational perspective, trying to really define your overall threat profile and what's really matters to you, it will quickly dive into, politics and geographic issues and all kinds of different things. With that example, when we're talking about energy refinement, oil and gas in the Midwest or the Midwest of the Americas, you've kind of got a broad spectrum right now. You're thinking hacktivists, you're thinking eco warriors, you're thinking nation state levels potentially trying to get in and stay in to cause impact to us. You guys just read a bit about Volt Typhoon, right? That's one of their main MOs. Those kind of threat actors aren't going to target Nike. It's not the same thing. There's not the same kind of crown jewels or potential impact in use case there. Did anybody have any questions through this? We're overall thinking about what are those questions we need to be asking ourselves as we're reading CTI, as we're trying to define who we are as an organization and what we care about. Understanding what that looks like, who we are, and how it all plays into the bigger picture. Cool. All right. And again, if you guys have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. I'm more than willing to take them. It makes this more interesting. I don't feel like I'm just talking into this dark void that is my webcam. All right, with those slides out of the way, we're going to do another little exercise here. So what we're going to do is a little bit of a hands-on exercise in assessing an organization. So what we've built for you is a kind of a little quick setup for an organization called the Cryptid Conservation Society. They're purely fictitious. This is a nonprofit out there that is dedicated to safeguarding and understanding cryptids of all shapes and sizes, right? So what you guys are going to be doing in the lab is attempting to kind of like examine the information you can find about this organization based on what we've given you, trying to paint a picture of who they are, identify any potential information that could help you identify gaps or weaknesses, identify where they are in the market and sector, what regions they're operating in, and any IP or data that would potentially be valuable to others. From there, I want you guys to think about who could potentially be a threat to them, stuff like that. We're going to ponder that more in a future exercise as well. So what that looks like is this next section here in Core Stack, the taking in a look in the mirror chapter, is what we're going to be working on. So this is kind of a short task. We'll say, let's go 10 minutes. All right. We'll have you guys look at the Cryptid Conservation Society website, kind of get an idea for who they are, and let's attempt to answer some of these questions. We'll come back and we'll talk this over together here in about 10 minutes. So we'll say it's just now 6 after. So let's say right around 14:15, we will come back. All right. So see a few of you guys kind of already made some assessments on CCS. Is everybody good to this point? You want to move forward? You guys want a few more minutes to keep digging through? I just want to say some of this might feel a little tedious. You might be asking yourselves, well, why am I doing this? The whole point here is to reinforce the concepts, the ideas, and the process when it comes to collecting data, being able to threat model and understand what you're looking for and be able to interpret that into something usable. So we're going to kind of do this thing several more times as a whole, and then let you kind of get into doing your own reporting and writing. So cool. Yeah, so I've got a couple responses already. So let's just dive into it. What did you guys think about Cryptid Conservation Society? Seems like a pretty cool place to work overall, right? And just like a quick little looky-loo around their website, their mission right there and what they're trying to do is awesome. But they do actually, let's see, who was it that sent me a little bit of info here? Arvind. Sorry if I messed your name up. Yeah, he'd actually kind of pointed out there's a good bit of information here from the overall, like about us, the mission, their community, what they're trying to do. It does paint a pretty good picture of who they are. So, I mean, if they're trying to threat model themselves, they know. But having a lot of this out there already publicly gives a lot of information for a potential threat to build a profile on them, potentially social engineer them, or kind of find a way in. Sadly, what I'm kind of looking at right here, what we put together for Cryptic Conservation Society, you will see out there a lot. Think of any kind of nonprofit website you've ever visited, or like a board of education, like maybe your kid's local school's website, things like that. All of this same kind of information they put out there, and it's all usable. So it's something in a modern day and age, we all have to be a little more cautious about the information we share. None of this is particularly damaging, but it is all helpful. Every little bit and piece matters, right? But they told us a lot. I mean, now we know this society itself is a nonprofit, so we know they're working with, say, things like donor lists, funds, events. They're doing research, so they've got a lot of potential IP and collected data. We know they're working in the Americas, right? So they're talking a lot about, like, say, the Pacific Northwest. They're talking about the Americas as a whole and the world overall, but they kind of narrowed it in their mission down to the Americas. Um, as we're looking through a little bit more of this, so yeah, one good kind of call out here is that website. Here's got a nice little login portal, so it looks like there is a way for people, say maybe their community or their team members or potential, say, donors could log in and have accounts. So they're storing data about people that visit or that frequent their website. Um, if we go back here, we look at contact, we've got some decent contact information. Now we kind of understand what their naming schema is, how they work. But also there was some cool little information in here outside of, the awesome images of cryptids and things that popped up, right? But there's a lot of information that could be potentially usable here when we think about it from an organizational standpoint. The first one down here, we can see they're talking about some of the equipment and stuff that they're starting to utilize. This is looking like kind of like a forward look at us piece, like, hey, we're awesome. These are the things we're doing and what we're working with. So it kind of gives people an idea of the potential attack vectors or vulnerabilities that they have and where they're going with this. What was also particularly useful is they've got a nice little, like, we're hiring post out here. They're looking for an infrastructure admin. They do a lot of really interesting stuff, but they outline quite well kind of who they're looking for, where they're working, the tools, the hardware that they're utilizing. So we can see they're talking, Cisco equipment, FortiGate firewalls, some modern VPN apps. They're doing SATCOM, doing stuff with Starlink and other things. There's a lot going on here and a lot of stuff that's potentially been targeted, especially here in the last few months. I mean, I'm pretty sure in the last 6 months, we've seen FortiGate pop up, we've seen Cisco pop up, we've seen ESXi, We've seen Windows always. This is like an hourly occurrence at this point. There's a lot of stuff in here that can kind of give someone an idea of where they would want to poke and prod. But this is also helpful for us trying to profile Cryptid Conservation Society because we know what they're trying to protect, and all of that information matters, right? And lastly, as we're thinking about this organization, there was one more quick little post they put up there saying, "Hey, we think we got hit. We just wanted to let everybody know there was a problem. Here's some details about the intrusion and the impact to our operations." So, quick question for you guys. If you were to just look at this one post, what kind of intelligence drop would you put it in? Would this be something considered more like operational, strategic? I would think this is probably pretty good from an operational perspective, especially if you work with this organization, whether as like a contractor, a someone in their supply chain, things like that, someone that does business with them. Now you kind of have an idea. And then, yes, also from a threat intelligence perspective, just the history of previous incidents, it really does say a lot about this organization and the assets that they value. Yep. And again, every little bit of information you put out there can potentially be helpful. So there's a lot we could learn about Cryptid Conservation Society here. Now, as we're looking at this, did anybody identify maybe any potential questions we didn't ask? Is there any other info we might want to know about CCS that we don't currently have? Okay. I mean, there's kind of a lot going on here that we're not really quite sure about yet. Like, how are they actually managing all of this right now? Do they have any kind of security tooling monitoring in place? Is there someone behind the wheel, or is this just kind of out there? So there's a lot of potential questions we could ask or try to answer, but let's kind of move forward for now. So this exercise was kind of get you into that mindset or thought process of being able to profile your organization, or in this instance, the fictitious one that we provided with you. Kind of an interesting way to look at it. It's not just oh, let's talk about this Acme Corp and how they do business and what's going on. I wanted to give you something a little different, right? So let's move on now. We've got an idea of CTI, how we're going to do our process. We've kind of taken a look in the mirror. We've defined who Cryptid Conservation Society is as an organization. Now let's take that information and work on defining our actual potential threats. Let's see. And Noah's got a lot of good drops down there. Good job in the chat, man. That is helpful. So these these two little images we see up here, I love using these because they really effectively define kind of like what a threat would be to you as an organization in the simplest terms possible. Casey John Ellis was great about kind of defining and calling it out. The same thing with the kind of little Venn diagram we have going on down here. When we're thinking about threats and who would care about us, our threat landscape overall, like it's going to be determined based on these kind of key factors. Like one, someone that could pose a threat to you, first off, do they have any kind of capability to actually be a threat to you? Is that group or entity or whoever it happens to be capable of harming your organization outside of just protesting outside or maybe sending you spam email? From a defensive standpoint, you can control pieces of this as you layer your defenses, as you improve as a security operations, and as you improve as an organization as a whole. You kind of raise that barrier to entry as to who is going to have the capability to affect you and your organization. So we are still faced with the fact that like this defensive complexity and being able to defend some depth, it does raise that level, but it still can be subverted by the simplest of things. A missing patch, a temporary firewall rule just for troubleshooting purposes. I mean, things like that can really provide that capability that may not have potentially been there. Next, speaking of, those supposedly temporary but always permanent temporary firewall rules, whoever that potential threat is, they need to have the opportunity in the first place. Do you expose any kind of resources or information to the internet? Could they potentially phish you? Do you not have any real good security program? Are you running outdated software or hardware? Anything that has known vulnerabilities? With CCS kind of being a nonprofit, the odds are, unless they got donated some really high speed new tech gear or a ton of money, they're probably using some older equipment, maybe some stuff that was donated to them, and it could be potentially end of life, out of a patch cycle, has a bunch of built-in vulnerabilities. All of that stuff could potentially provide opportunity, right? And then lastly, for them to actually be a threat, they need to have some reason to actually care and want to be. What's their hostile intent? So are we talking about an insider threat? Are we talking about a potential competitor? Maybe it's some criminals. It could be a nation state threat actor, maybe a shady government organization that doesn't want you researching and releasing information about cryptids. Who knows? But in reality, all three together is going to help you kind of narrow your scope even further and determine what those real threats are to you. So if you're afraid of certain, let's say, different behaviors or impacts, right? Like maybe espionage is your worst nightmare. That kind of a realm, that kind of behavior puts you into different spaces, right? As opposed to maybe you're in ransomware, which is everybody's problem. They don't care at this point. So going back to the map we looked at earlier, what markets, verticals do you work in? Who do you work with? Where are you working? All of that information plus your crown jewels can kind of help you tune this even further. Putting that together with capability, opportunity, and intent, you've got a pretty clear picture at this point. So that's a good breakdown. Okay, so that's kind of what we're going to utilize and what kind of questions we need to answer to define a threat for us now. So we know who CCS is, we know what they're doing, what they have for the most part. Now let's go and try and actually define the threat. I like to keep these kind of more thought heavy and hands-on heavy as opposed to me talking. I know it doesn't always feel that way when you're going through workshops. So I want to make sure you get the most out of it and you get time to actually practice these skills. The next piece here we're doing is the defining our threat chapter under CTI 101. This is going to go fast as we get through this next piece. You're going to get to go dive into some Intel platforms, reporting, and all kinds of other stuff. So what you guys are going to do in this section is take this information you've already kind of gathered and the picture you've painted of the Cryptid Conservation Society. You're going to use that information to think over and research some threats and kind of try to answer the question of what a potential threat would be to this organization. What are their motivations? Who would have the potential opportunity, capability, and intent to do so? And then we want to also identify, have we seen anything in the past? Spoiler alert, yes, we have, right? That could help influence this assumption or this process. So let's look through it. Let's see and try to put a name to what we think Cryptid Conservation Society would be facing. And I'll make this one probably a little shorter. Let's say like 7 to 10 minutes. We'll say like 5 minutes. Let's think this through. You guys have all the bulk of the info already, okay? So by 14:35, we'll come back and we'll kind of discuss what we think a valid threat would be for this organization. If the Cryptid Conservation Society kind of thought process or kind of thought exercise here isn't your thing, feel free to walk through these exercises and just do it against your organization. The key here is helping you guys get the practice to run through it all. Were there any questions about the exercise, how everything's working, what we've been doing up to this point? Cool. All right, I'll talk to you guys here in a couple minutes. Okay, so we had some time to think over potential threats to Cryptid Conservation Society. What are your all's thoughts here? And I know I did a kind of a good drop here on a good data point as to what could be a threat to them. But based on what we got, what we know, I'm curious to see what you guys think. Is there anything key that sticks out? Any potential organizations, threat actors, things like that? So I do know this press release has been kind of a pretty good data point for us to kind of have an idea of what could be a threat to Cryptid Conservation Society. Some shady secret government organization that might be, say, harvesting cryptids or wanting to keep the information about them out of the public eye is a great potential threat, right? They would have some kind of hostile intent. Cryptic Conservation Society is doing a lot of work. They're trying to protect these guys and educate the masses. So they don't want that information going out. So there's definitely intent there, right? A shady government organization or NGO or something like that would definitely have either the expertise or the money to buy it to cause some kind of impact, right? As well as, with an organization like that, they're working with potentially outdated software hardware. There might be a potential slip up that gave someone that opportunity. The organization might have also created their own opportunity, say through an insider threat, like Noah was suggesting. They flip somebody. Maybe they got a plant inside that gave them access. Um, yeah, Arvin's saying like fake donations or phishing campaigns using those NGO names. That's a great potential route to this. Yeah. Are we all kind of pretty set on thinking that primary kind of threat profile or actor for CCS is going to be something like a government org or or something like that? Would you see this being something in the public sector, maybe hacktivists, maybe some crazy tinfoil hat people that think everyone working at CCS is just crazy and putting out disinformation? Did anybody go that route? So I asked that question to kind of address a topic that hasn't really been touched on, and I didn't want to spend too much time in. But as we're making this assessment, as we're trying to determine a potential threat, you had a bunch of things kind of come to mind when you automatically started thinking about cryptids. When you saw these pictures, of like a Wendigo, of aliens, of Mothman, you kind of immediately started going, um, okay, this is a little tinfoil hatty. This is a little weird. You started getting into the realm of sci-fi and thinking in that past. So it's kind of creating a bias in your head, regardless of what you may personally believe, real or not real. You're already kind of thinking, well, there's something going on here, and that bias is going to affect your assessments and who you determine to be a threat. Remember earlier on in the workshop when we're talking about how we want to gather CTI, how we're going through this process, it needs to be factual, right? Evidence-based. Right now, the only real evidence we have is their self-purported release talking about the intrusion that happened to them. They were able to kind of point it in a certain direction, again, probably also using their biases and who they've typically came in and dueled it out with in the past, whether through previous incidents in the field interactions, things like that. So most likely, most relevant would potentially be some kind of um, government agency or organization or clandestine operation trying to keep this info from the world. Yeah, attribution is a huge can of worms, and it's one of those things that never really you can say with 100% confidence unless everything points in a direction and they go, yep, we did it. But even then, do you trust it? Did they actually do the thing or are they just chasing clout? There's always so many different things from a psychological perspective to take into account in the CTI. But that's all for a whole other workshop and another time. Let's keep pushing forward here. So, how are you guys feeling about these little hands-on thought exercises so far? Are you guys liking the format, liking what we're doing here? Anybody getting something new out of this yet? Cool. Awesome. Glad you guys are having fun with this one or liking what we're doing here. So let's push forward. We kind of went through the whole process. We did some threat modeling. We defined what a threat is to us. Now we've got to get into the whole just doing it, right? In the wise words of Shia LaBeouf. So let's talk about gathering intel. As we're going through this whole process, I wanted to give you one more kind of example here of strategic versus operational versus kind of tactical. Typically, I'll flip this based on what I'm doing, whether it's from a red or blue perspective. Typically, if I'm looking at intelligence, it's usually to do some kind of threat emulation or build out a plan to utilize. So I kind of look at strategic and to some extent operational reporting as not very useful for me. Sometimes there's some meat on the bone in there in operational, but usually tactical is kind of best case for me because I can get that actual behaviors distilled out of those reports. But to look at this from an actual just plain like unbiased red or blue CTI perspective, I wanted to give you a couple different examples of clear and actionable intelligence. On the left, this one from TeamViewer, just kind of talking about what they had going on, is a good kind of strategic or high level operations planning report. This is going to let any customers or anybody that's a particular user or supply chain vendor, things like that with TeamViewer, hey, something's up, you might want to take some action and do something, right? In the middle here under operational, we've got T codes. We've got some general ideas. They're talking about the routine that this malware that Lockbit's utilizing kind of does. They tell us a high level, like inch deep, mile wide. Hey, they're doing some system information enumeration. They're killing some processes. Maybe they're trying to run some commands and set persistence, right? So we at least have an idea of like what parts of the kill chain have been seen and the overall kind of tactics that are being used, but not directly the procedure, if that makes sense. To the right, under this tactical one, now we're getting more into that lowest level, like IOC artifact side of information. We've gotten a lot of potential known bad URLs, domains, things like that, known tools that these threat actors have utilized. You don't see it on screen, but potentially things like listing out potential commands that were ran, tools used, maybe how they did exfiltration, where they sent that data to. All of those kind of things fall under that tactical level and can be really helpful to us. So when we're thinking about gathering intel, I know you guys have probably seen this pyramid of pain a bunch if you've been in cyber for a second. I'd like you guys to look at this from more of a, let's not think strategic for now, right? Let's think tactical and operational. That tactical level, so, 4 through 6 at the bottom, so like domain names, IP addresses, hash values, these are all pretty simplistic. They're not stuff you'll often see reused too much, but it's still good to know, especially in the event that you have to do some kind of incident response or threat hunting. The good news here is a lot of the information in today's day and age at this level 4 through 6 is, I won't say is, I will say should be kind of covered by your security tooling and vendors already. If you're utilizing, AV, EDR, specific IDS and IPSs, firewalls, stuff like that, they all have their automatic allow and block listing stuff happening. So a lot of that should already be covered for you. But as with everything in cyber, right? Always got to verify, always got to validate. So when we're thinking tactical, we're kind of looking there. When we're looking at operational, I look at this more as like keyed into the top three out of the pyramid of pain. We're thinking like what kind of network artifacts can we see or find? What kind of artifacts are left on disk on the host? Is there a ransom node? Is there a specific payload or implant that could tip me off into what this threat is and what they're doing and where they're going next? Are they using any known tools that could help key into what's going on or where they're at in their kill chain currently? And then lastly, the behaviors, how they execute and do certain things can help you kind of key into what threat you're facing. An awesome example of this, just to kind of talk on that tools and TTP piece for a second. I know we mentioned Volt Typhoon earlier in the workshop, you thought about them. They have a really interesting way of doing user enumeration. Usually when I say that phrase, like user enumeration, people think, oh, they ran some PowerShell commands, maybe they ran net, or they did like get tag local user, or they did some kind of dump, right? All of that is really well known. That's kind of low-hanging fruit, and it's stuff most people should be looking at, or at least have some kind of detection mechanisms in place for. Well, Volt Typhoon, being the nation state level actor that they are, know this and went, well, there's a better way. I can go and just look at the event logs on your endpoints, and if I can, if it's domain joined, remotely query event logs on the domain controller to get logs, checking 4624, seeing, hey, who's logged in lately? What hosts are they on? And pulling that data just quickly down into a DAT file and exfilling it out. And that's how they're doing their valid account enumeration to see like what users are there, where are they logged in at, so they can kind of build an attack path and pick who they want to target. From an operational perspective, it's kind of brilliant, right? Because nobody's really watching their event log. They just care that the logs are there and they're being shipped to their security tools. They're not looking for someone looking in the logs. They're looking for all those other commands. They've got alerts and detection rule sets set up for someone running, net or AD PowerShell commands in the command line. They don't have someone looking at event log. That's not going to bubble to the top usually. So that's how they're flying under the radar. And that's the kind of stuff you want to pick out from this CTI. If you go back and look at that SCYTHE article I gave you for an example from strategic or operational, it actually mentions that TTP in there and shows you how they did it from the command line. It is really cool. It blew my mind when I first saw it. I thought it was an awesome way of going about it. But sorry, that was a random tangent. I squirreled. But that's the kind of stuff you're trying to pick and pull out of all of this data that we're collecting, right? So we talked about what we're trying to gather. Where do we find it? So I have a couple kind of good resources and things I would mention when we're thinking about CTI and starting collections. If you're like most organizations, budgets are tight right now. People aren't spending a ton of money on things. And if there's one thing that's expensive in today's day and age, it is information. Information is costly. So using closed sources may not always be available to you. So kind of understanding and knowing some really good open and valuable resources is kind of what I'm gearing at towards here. Obviously, if you're in the Microsoft realm or using CrowdStrike and SentinelOne and all these others, they have their own closed feeds you can pay extra money for and things like that. But that's not very helpful to us right now, especially when we're just starting out. So I wanted to mention a couple resources for you. The first one being this start.me page. Let me just pull it up so you guys can get a look at it. It is really cool. So this is kind of like a single pane of glass. I'll usually kind of start my days when I'm doing research around this page here. It has basically a feed set up for every relevant, like, government agency, private sector organization, anyone that's doing any kind of research, threat intelligent publishing, anything like that in the cyber realm. It's on this start.me page. It's a cool single pane of glass as a starting point. What I like from it is I can really start over time to see trends on what people are reporting on and what's kind of happening in the world. You'll see how fast stuff tends to disseminate. And there you go. If you guys wanted to kind of take a look at it and poke at it, Jared went ahead and dropped the link to it in chat. It's an awesome resource. It's free and it has links to anything and everything you could really want. It also has some really good, if you wanted to get a little deeper into learning about threat intelligence and all the different like taxonomies, tools, resources, stuff like that. Down here at the bottom, you'll see some different useful information that you could go and dig on anymore, as opposed to, researches and resources. But it's a cool starting point. It's one I usually always recommend. Yeah, that's what I thought as well. No, like it's very well organized. They kind of start like kind of big name to small, and then they go government agencies towards the right, and they do all the other resources towards the bottom. So it's a good starting point. It's got good trends. You can see everybody's reporting, and all in all, it's just handy, right? So that's one I typically like people to check out, or at least recommend that you can look at. From other organizations that are doing awesome reporting, and that could be a helpful starting point for you. SCYTHE, obviously, I've mentioned them a couple times. You guys read some of their reports earlier. They're really well written. They're really detailed. They give you a ton of information that's usable. If you haven't paid attention to their alerts and security advisories they've been putting out over the last 2 years or so, you're missing out. It's a ton of information. They're constantly putting out new alerts and resources. Like, I mean, I've got a dedicated feed watching them, and I get pinged maybe 6 or 7 times a day from SCYTHE from them putting out a new release or advisory. So overall, it's just an organization doing something awesome, and it's a free resource to you. They're talking, CVEs, threat actors, what stuff's being exploited in the wild, all the way down to like real intelligence reports from intrusions they've seen and helped with or that people have reported. Next, we kind of get down here into, the DFIR report, Google on the threat analysis group, Unit 42. These vendors, I kind of bring them up because they've all done some really good reporting in the past. I would also mention, sorry, Elastic's security research team. They're doing some awesome stuff here recently as well. All of these are kind of good starting points and good vendors that are putting out some pretty timely information. I would say there's a little bit of a difference and variance here in how they do it. So when you look at like how SCYTHE compared to like say maybe Google and Microsoft, they're putting out stuff fairly frequently. DFIR reports sometimes not so much, right? Theirs is going to be a little more focused on kind of the malware, the forensics of it all, how things are working under the hood. But their releases are usually a lot slower, like in that one to a couple a month, as opposed to like SCYTHE doing like 6 or 7 a day. So there's variance there. Obviously, social media, if you don't have some kind of random accounts across, Twitter, X, LinkedIn, everywhere else, you're missing a lot of information potentially, right? Because people do share that information there publicly first. And then lastly, as like kind of an honorable mention, there is a Rosetta Stone out there that exists when it comes to thinking about threat actors, like their taxonomy, the different naming schemas, some historical reporting on them that can kind of help clear it up because every vendor has their own, naming schema and name for various threat actors. Like I want to say what APT33 is called that. They're called Refined Kitten. They're called Peach Sandstorm. Like at any given time, most of the people you've heard of, the named actors, have got 3 to 5 names. So this document really helps clear it up. I threw it in chat for you, as well as gives you some starting points on reporting for them. Lastly, what I would talk about as a resource is MITRE ATT&CK. A lot of people don't realize this, but MITRE ATT&CK recently, I want to say it's probably been a little over a year now, put out a new tab called CTI in groups. Under here, they've cataloged like all of the reporting, everything they have, everything that's been attributed under these different IDs. So they go by the name, any like associated groups or alternate names for it, and a quick description. What's nice about this is everything they have is kind of organized under this now, under its well-known or common name. So like if I click Volt Typhoon here, it'll dive in, gives you a quick breakdown of who that is, any of the information they have about them. They break down key campaigns, techniques, procedures, a little bit of everything you could potentially need to get started in researching that threat. So this is an awesome resource. And again, this one's free 99. And it's out there. MITRE is doing some cool stuff with this, and it's growing. I've been watching this kind of steadily grow. It's a really awesome resource to have. But yeah, these are just a couple resources and places where you can find some good reporting, some good CTI. As you guys are starting to research and do some of your own parsing of threats, I would say check out these resources I've brought to the kind of forefront for you. Does anybody have any that they have typically used in the past or they think has been doing some good writing or just good information as a whole when it comes to intelligence? Cool. If you do, please go ahead and drop them down in chat. I'm always curious to look for new resources, right? Especially if there's something, a good hidden gem out there. So lastly, what about our existing infra? You source telemetry, right? You got your AV, EDR logs, you got host logs, your firewalls, like all of those things are generating analytics and data for you. So you've got to utilize those if you have the capability to ingest it, right? Those are going to be very telling, and it's going to be extremely helpful once your teams start getting into threat hunting or actually doing incident response, where you can say, hey, look, X, Y, and Z is what I've seen in the reporting. When I looked at our logs, our analytics, we've got some of these indicators. Maybe we need to do something, right? You can kind of help give them a COA and point them in a direction, not just give them some kind of vague, like, something's happening. So other things to think about is what feeds do you already have access to? A lot of people don't realize, like to some shape and form, your vendors give you some kind of intel feed or at least some basic information about not just threats, but what that looks like in your environment. Now, like CrowdStrike has their own like threat actor and content dashboards. I know Microsoft Defender Enterprise does it as well. Same SentinelOne. Pick your vendor; they all have some form of it. And lastly, do you have some kind of central repository, like I might have mentioned earlier, when you're thinking about vulnerability reports, intrusion reports, any kind of summaries, write-ups that have been done in the past about stuff you've faced? All of that can be used to do this collection and parsing. But next, what are some of these hurdles we might face real quick, and then we'll get into one more exercise, and this one's going to start getting a little fun. Hurdles. So CTI data in itself is typically historic. It's not always the case that what you're seeing being reported is the new hotness and something that happened an hour ago or a day ago or maybe even a week ago. A lot of the times that data may not represent a threat's current capability, and what we're seeing is the aftermath of some intrusion or some other event that's already happened, and it got tied up in, say, incident response and legal proceedings and all kinds of other things. So by the time we see the release, it might be 6 to 18 months before you see it publicly. So at that point, like, stuff moves fast in IT and cyber, right? Threat actors evolve, they change tactics and tools and the way they do things. So you have to be able to not necessarily course correct, but take into account that the data and information you have might already be a little behind the curve. So you're going to have to try and pull that and project into the future to see how it would potentially affect and work for you. With a lot of the CTI that's out there, sometimes it can be really hard to get a clear picture as well. And this can be a hurdle for us because maybe you're researching a specific threat, whether that's from the blue side trying to build detections or the red side or purple trying to emulate them. Without that full kind of like keychain and having gaps within that process, it's hard to build the full picture. So talking to our industry peers, kind of looking at our historical knowledge and our understanding of those threats can help us kind of build that picture when we need it. And we might have to get creative at times. And then lastly, like, beware of unsafe assumptions. We talked about bias a little bit earlier. Our assumptions can directly affect what we put out, but it can also change the whole course of how a threat hunt goes for your organization or how incident response works. I've seen it happen a lot in missions and other things that we've ran where they'll see something, they make an assumption, and they just rabbit hole on it. Like, say they're looking at NetFlow logs and go, oh man, this is coming from China. There's a lot of data coming from China. Oh, we found him. There's the bad guy. And they just start pigeonholing on that when in reality it's just a web server where a lot of ads and like content delivery comes from. So they're seeing that and chasing bad when in reality it's something benign and just a fact of doing business on the internet, right? So being able to see that, acknowledge it, and not just get stuck in a rigid way of thinking is kind of key in a hurdle you could face. So exercise. With this one here, we're going to be a little quicker. I gave you guys, under gathering and parsing CTI, access to a couple different of the resources already posted in here, but I gave you a task and a link. So there's a report here on Royal Ransomware or Black Suit. I'd like you guys to take a quick look at these reports and from here kind of expand, pull out a couple other relevant links or articles. Feel free to share with each other inside of chat so that other people can take a look at the different report writing that's out there. And just take note of a couple of different things, like what's the most common behavior or attack vector you're seeing reported on when it comes to Black Suit and Royal? Are there trends in the way people talk about them or talk about their TTPs? Who are they typically target? Can you define a vertical or a region or a specific sector that Black Suit likes to go after? Is there any particular motive? Are they in for just espionage? Are they in for smash and grab crime, trying to make some money? Try and interpret that from what you see in the reporting. And then lastly, is there any unique or like key operational and tactical level intelligence that you've picked out from those links? Okay. So with this one, let's say another 10 minutes and I'll check in with you. Look at this link, generate a couple others, and please share with each other in chat so you can all see it. Okay. And then we'll come back and we'll talk over some of these questions. From here, we're through the biggest chunk of this workshop, ladies and gents. From here, you'll spend a little bit of time playing with MISP, looking through OpenCTI. We'll talk about reporting. I'll kind of brush over this section for you. It's very hands-on and easy to follow, but I don't want to waste too much time with just having you generate a document right now. This is something you're going to continuously practice and work anyway. I was more concerned with the concepts and the mindset of doing the thing as opposed to reporting on it first. So yeah, take a few minutes, research Black Suit and Royal, kind of let me know what you come back with. I'll talk to you here at, let's say, 10 after. I'll check in. Oh yeah, the Bushido is a great one there, Sherry. That's a good recommendation. So if you guys haven't seen this from Bushido Token, he's got a lot of cool stuff out there. You know what? I'm actually going to bookmark this. Boom. How about that? Okay, everybody, here we go. I know that was a quick little 10 minutes, but did you guys find anything interesting in those two articles I gave you? I can see a few of you down there already threw some extra links into the chat for everyone to peruse. Yeah, that's a good blurb right there, about how Black Suit does partial encryption. It is definitely really interesting. So obviously we know Royal Black Suit is kind of an evolution from one to the other. We kind of pull out of this common like behavior attack vectors. They're here for ransomware, right? That's the primary use of it. Royal itself kind of started as a simple ransomware suite and has grown into much more. It's kind of closer into almost ransomware as a service at this point. But who have they targeted historically? Was anybody able to determine if there's a trend to the victims of Black Suit or Royal? Is there a specific vector or not vector, industry, a specific region, anything like that? So I guess let's take a look at this real quick and see if there's anything in that advisory. Yeah, there we go. Sherry's seen it. So healthcare and education. It's kind of a good call out. Let's see, did MITRE Groups say anything about it? Let's see. Yep. That's a good call out there, Noah. Yeah, used worldwide. So they're a good example of they don't have a particular, I was about to say spaghetti. They don't have a particular vertical per se that they like to target. They're more in it for the motive, right? They're about their Benjamins. So we can kind of think about it as there's potential for Black Suit or its variant to be used against much of any of us currently working in this space, like most ransomware as a service or just variants in general. Espionage, we can effectively say like they're about their money, right? We've seen that in multiple reports talking about the ransoms they're asking for. There are no small sums. And then you guys did a really good kind of example here showing me some new reporting and intelligence you guys have seen about it. I like the variance in what you're providing too. So we've got some articles from uh Black Suit. You've got some stuff from Cyber Reason, or not Black Suit, from Sentinel One, from Cyber Reason, ICE and Justice Department. Those are good call outs. They're not ones I would typically look at, so that's interesting to see. Um, and then, yeah, it's actually a good point there. You can infer based on their ransoms and the amounts of money they're asking for, their targets won't typically be less funded orgs. So we could very easily say that the likelihood of like Cryptid Conservation Society, a little nonprofit, for example, would be unlikely to be targeted or have a variant of Black Suit used against them, unless it was something very specific or contracted, I guess you could say. But the likelihood is low because, well, I mean, you ransomware something like CCS, what are the odds that you're going to get a tens of millions, if not more, kind of dollar payout? Not very much, because most small businesses and nonprofits and these kind of organizations, they're working with a budget that consists of a couple of nickels, shoestrings, and bubble gum. So the odds of you getting a payout, slim to none. Is this making sense to everybody? How we're kind of going through and pulling this information, how we can make these inferences and determine if it's a threat or not and why we would care? Cool. Thank you, Chris. Now, throughout all the articles you guys looked at over the last few minutes and through the CISA and Palo Alto articles, were there any behaviors or specific TTPs that were seen in the reporting that stuck out to you? Was there something that was just really unique or really cool? I know Noah highlighted their partial encryption scheme. Is there any others? So one that stuck out to me that I thought was pretty interesting is kind of how they do C2. They're not always known to leverage like distributed command and control the way they run. They're not using normal platforms. They kind of go a little bit of living off the land or using open source tooling like Chisel, just plain old SSH or puttying in. And they're moving around networks that way instead of trying to bring in their own implants and potentially burn resources and money, lots of money, by exposing custom built tooling. And in reality, why do that when just using all of the stuff that's already out there works, right? Chris Roper is calling out their batch file usage. See, that's always an interesting way, and it's really cool to see that even today is still kind of a valid way of flying under the radar. So they're using it here, like they'll bring in that batch file as an encrypted 7-zip file, and they'll use it to do any number of different tasks. Specifically in here, they call out like doing new admin user creation, forcing group policy updates, stuff like that. I've seen this time and time again. You can kind of see the trends in reporting because the same kind of setup, the way the usage of bat files was done by Volt Typhoon, both for infill but also specifically for exfil. They tended to collect and hide data in batch files so they could pull it out of the network later. So this is one of those things here is like as you're looking and pulling out behaviors, you'll notice trends and how threads tend to operate, especially if they're in similar kind of avenues or experience levels. Yep. That's one of those things like you're kind of surprised if you don't see Cobalt Strike or something like Sliver or Empire in a report here recently. But cool. All right. So we've at this point we've kind of defined threat intelligence, how the process works. We did a little bit of introspection, got an idea of who we were as an organization. We defined our threats, and we did a bit of research. So at this point, I would be willing to say we've gotten through kind of a good chunk of that whole. Let me scroll back here real quick so you can see it. This whole process, right? So we were given our direction. We're trying to understand what's going on. We started doing some collection. We've been doing a little bit of processing and analysis as we're reading and pulling out pieces and parts, like these inferences we've made, key behaviors. I'm asking you guys to do that and to look at those things because that's all a part of this step, right? You've got to be able to not just read these articles and collect them, but understand what's happening and pull out key tidbits that can be actionable insights and something from a defensive perspective for you to hunt, detect, and alert on, and also from an offensive perspective, potentially use and emulate. So these are all very key tasks and skills you guys need to develop. Again, I know it seems tedious, but that's why I'm kind of reinforcing this, is so you do this process cyclically and it becomes second nature. So let me scroll back here all the way to, let's say, around 26. Let's kind of move on. Now we're going to dive in. We'll talk a minute about a couple tools and platforms. Namely, we went kind of the open route with MISP and OpenCTI. So OpenCTI in itself, this is kind of like a central point for your intelligence operations as a whole. It's very robust. It's an open framework. It's got all kinds of different integrations and ways that you can connect all kinds of different threat feeds, your tooling. It's really good at storage and correlation between all of the reports and indicators and things that you're getting. And it's also really good at pulling in like your AV and EDR, like your scene logs, things like that. You can directly tie in as well. So it's cool to see all of this together and it's utilizing a common language. And they try to use these structured languages so that dissemination of your intelligence, not just within your organization, but say to partners or near peers is easier. So just like if you're on the blue side, if you use Sigma rules a lot, Sigma is a common framework and language you can speak that everyone can easily translate a rule into something usable as a detection or a query in your vendor security tool of choice. OpenCTI or intelligence platforms as a whole also do the same thing. Normally, there's a bunch of different ones, but a lot of the stuff you'll see, and I believe Noah called it out earlier, you'll see a lot of like sticks packages that are just kind of like data bundles that include a lot of this information for you. So this right here, just kind of quick show off of what it is. I think I have a tab open currently. Just as an example, this isn't in the lab environment for you guys because it's kind of you had to register for it ahead of time and it's hard to make a bunch of different accounts. But I wanted you guys to at least see it. Here, let me log back in first. So if you haven't heard before, maybe you're kind of in the market to develop your own kind of CTI process and you're looking at tools and applications. Filigran as an org has got a bunch of stuff out there. Some of it's actually pretty interesting, so it could be worth a check out for you. But here I am. This is kind of like the main dashboard on OpenCTI for this one that's set up as a demo environment. And it's really easy to kind of just look at the data sets and stuff they have up here. You can see different trends, targeting sectors and regions by, date, who they are, the sectors, any kind of active vulnerabilities and reporting you're seeing. The cool thing here is the ability to do, say, like custom dashboards and different things based on what your current goal or operation is. You can see here in this demo one, they've got different ones built out for like energy or finance, so vulnerability monitoring, or just like a general like global threat intelligence. I thought this one was kind of interesting. So they're talking here now like active intrusion sets, different malwares that are being used. This is a good way for you to kind of come in here now and you can pivot and correlate based on what we're seeing here. You see, I just clicked on APT 28. Now we've got some quick little like descriptions, some data about the orgs, any kind of relationships that are tied to this specific object within OpenCTI being that threat actor group. Any reports that mention them, history. It's a really cool kind of setup. And what's interesting is it's all kind of self-contained, so you can come in here and look at the reports, look at the information about it, and any external references. Let's see what else can I show you about on this one. So you can even from like an investigation or a research standpoint, or even like incident, you can set up investigations in here to track everything. Overall, it's a really cool platform and it's open for use. All right, yeah. It's not just a correlation engine, but it's also storage. It's useful. There's a lot going on here as a whole. Let's see, so I've used Multigo a bit, but more for OSINT. Yep. So this one is OpenCTI, and you can see like it's got a lot of the same stuff you would expect to see in most places. It's and a lot of this information you can pull in feeds to have it ingest for you, but you can also manually include things and other information that you care about. Where did my slides go? Sorry, 1 second, guys. Think there it is. There we go. Too many tabs open. All right, so that was OpenCTI. The next one we're talking about is MISP. This one you'll get a chance to play with here in the next exercise. We have an instance set up in the lab for you. You'll access the Unicorn host from there in the browser. You should be able to get to MISP. Basically, MISP just stands for Malware Intelligence Sharing Platform. It's basically kind of like purpose built for CTI to be a place, like collect, store, and share that structured intelligence that you're pulling out. It's gives you a really easy way to not just organize and research, but to share information. It supports all the common little language formats you would expect from a CTI tool, like sticks, OpenIOC, even CSVs if you wanted to have some kind of consistent structure for data exchange. And it's giving you kind of everything you need in a little like one-stop shop platform. You can also have it set up with, all the different little ingestions and enrichment pieces that can give context to the IOCs you're seeing, to any like investigations you're doing, like geolocation information on IPs and domains, any details about specific actors. If you're seeing, malware samples or like suspicious binaries, things like that, it can help give you information about those. And it integrates with all those other external resources pretty well. So it's kind of a really cool starting point. I'm not going to show this one to you too much because you're going to get a chance to play with it right now. In the lab environment under Intel platforms, you'll see there's a quick overview on MISP, and then there's a little mess around with ingesting some sticks into MISP. So what we can do here is log into the lab environment. On your desktop, you should see a folder called CTI Workshop that's already got some sticks files for you. If that is not there, you should also see, where did it go? Sorry, my link was off. Just let me know if it's not there and I'll make sure to get it re-added into the lab manual. And Jerry just put a note in there as well. If for some reason in your instance, MISP isn't coming up directly, you should be able to go onto the Splunk instance and reset the service. Sometimes it just decides to shut itself off right now, or it's not coming up all the way when your environment booted. So what you're going to need to do, if you haven't already, is come here to the Systems tab, launch the group. It'll turn everything on. If you haven't done this yet, it could take a couple minutes because it's going to wait for the domain to stand up before login is available. So I would say take a quick few minutes, go grab a water once you start your hosts. Then you can come back and access this unicorn host and we can step through it. But that's what we're working on. We're going to go through MISP overview and the ingesting into MISP. While you're doing this part of the lab, take some time to dig around inside the MISP platform itself, see where information is, see what kind of different dashboards, actions, stuff that exists, and just take some time to play. I'm gonna say we'll probably give this one maybe good 15 minutes before I do a check-in. If you guys have any questions, concerns, anything like that, please drop them down in the chat, and myself and Jared's here to help if you're having lab environment issues. We'll get through this one, then we'll wrap it up with talking about some reporting, giving you some good resources there. And that'll probably be a workshop at that point. So I'll talk to you guys here again at around 1540. Okay, guys, so noticed a big little oopsie. For some reason, the sticks file didn't make it on the desktop. Yes, it was supposed to be there. You can use, I want to say the working link that Noah dropped there can get to it. I also just exposed them to you inside of CoreStack. If you look over on the left sidebar, you'll see a button now called Files. You can download them both from there and then just copy paste into the desktop. Again, sorry about that. Wouldn't a live workshop without at least one mistake, right? Okay, so because I made a little oopsie and forgot to include those files for you, I'll say we'll push to another 5 minutes or so, so 15 till, okay? And then I'll just do a speed run after that on reporting. Nobody likes documentation anyway. Just playing, just playing. Okay, how's everybody doing? Did you guys get through these two sections? So it should have been kind of pretty quick. Once you did the ingestion, turn around and you'll have it to where you can explore the different attributes, look through the information that's within it in the package. It's all pretty kind of cut and dry as you're going through it. Awesome. Yeah, and the main goal here was just to kind of give you guys a quick exposure to an adjusting or an adjustment, a CTI platform, let you play around with it for a minute. Like I said at the beginning, the workshop environment is actually open for another hour after this. So if you want to spend some more time working around in MISP, messing around, or just exploring in general, you have the ability to do so. For the sake of time, I want to be respectful for you guys. I'm going to go ahead and speed run through the last chunk of this slide deck. We'll talk through some concepts, and then I'll leave you guys open to individual play and let you explore in the labs more. So now we've done the whole thing. Let's go back. That was what slide? I want to say like 13. We've been through this whole processing and analysis piece. We've got an idea how we're going to dig it through. Well, now we need to disseminate, right? Everyone's favorite part. We got to do some writing. We're going to take that information and we need to make it clear, concise, and usable for our, I'll use the term customers, I guess you could say, for whoever we're providing this information to. Um, we were right here. So we'll look at how we can generate some reports real fast. Give you guys a quick little tips and resources to do this quickly and easily. Um, so kind of quick requirements when we're thinking about reporting. You got to have that accurate, the timely information. It needs to be easily readable. It needs to be understandable, especially without having any prior or previous knowledge of what is happening within that particular incident or operation or whatever's going on. Your reporting in itself, it should only be kind of relevant and tied to the things you're directly reporting on or things you're trying to affect within your organization at that point in time. You want it to be useful to your organization or at best to near peers, and you want to make sure it's overall just serving your needs. You're going to want to ensure it's formatted again to that correct audience. Are you trying to write more of just a general um, executive style report that's going to affect overall business operations and strategy? Are you trying to generate a report specifically for something at that operational level, like maybe for an upcoming threat hunt operations or maybe during an incident response triage? Or are you looking to be a little more tactical and provide someone with some quick down and dirty information on stuff they can actively look for, say during like an IR procedure? These are the kind of things we're thinking about. So it's like, what are we reporting on? Who really needs this info? Like, what's really kind of the best format for us to give it to them? Like the little blurb down here says, it doesn't always have to be a PDF or a PowerPoint. I know a lot of times, especially right now, PowerPoint kind of hurts a lot of people's souls when they see slide decks come around, especially when they're long. Depending on your organization, that format could be something as simple as a markdown file separated out with all of the relevant information you're trying to provide. It could be PDF one pagers, it could be Excel sheets, anything and everything. Like there's no right or wrong answer. It just comes down to what works best for you and your organization. Um, so kind of one of the main ones we see no matter what, regardless of what side of the fence you work on. Attack Navigator always comes up, right? So this is kind of a quick, easy visual representation that you could take that information you have and turn it into something that most people can understand and work with. Um, the overall goal here being just understanding those TTPs. So this is something you would see more in like a, let's say, operational report because it's giving them that high level overview. What are the TTPs that are being used? What have we seen? What have we not seen? Or what are we hunting for? That kind of a thing. And you can easily like highlight it without providing really in the weeds detail that would be more specified to that technical operator. And again, we're not trying to play, miter card bingo. We're not trying to cover the whole map, as they say. We're just trying to visually represent the data that we're wanting to share with our audience. And I don't know about you guys, but if you're like me at all, I'm much more of a visual person over reading. So if I can relay information in, say, a singular image or in some kind of flow or mind map, I would much rather have that kind of a product as opposed to a 50-page PDF that details everything. So it comes down to knowing your audience, the taste, how they want it, and this kind of ties into that feedback loop, right? You want to ensure you're asking those questions and understanding the people you're providing data to. Another one for those of you that are visually inclined is attack flow. This is something we use a lot here at Scythe as well. I tend to show kill chains in this kind of a format. It's a really cool visual representation, not only of like TTPs, like the behaviors, but also like down to like the IOC level, like URIs, IP addresses. You can even do like specific commands, tools used, descriptions of what's happening. You can see here on the slide, there's a really good example here where it's talking about like exploiting a public facing application, calling out CVEs, and then providing you with some context of like the actual command line that you could look for. So overall, this is a really cool way of representing data. Again, I'm much more of a visual person, so I would prefer this kind of a style. But doesn't always have to be that way. It comes down to the audience. So for those of you that need more of like those general report templates, CTID, their Center for Threat Informed Defense, again, another MITRE free 99 thing that's out there for you guys, put out some awesome templates that you can use to get you started. So at a minimum, if you guys haven't figured it out yet, you're not sure what your reporting format's going to look like, they've taken care of that for you. You can use it as a good starting point and modify from here. The link is on the slide if you wanted to reach these. It's also in your lab manual. And if you wanted to kind of take a look at these sample reports and some of the other stuff they provided, we also have these in here under desktop tools, CTI, under templates. You can get a quick look at some of them there. There's Word docs and sample PDFs for you to take a look at. And it's nice that they give you multiple different formats. It's not just a singular, go away, I don't want you to have my data. So like here's an example of one of their PDFs they provide you. But the different formats we've got in there for you guys. So they've got just like a normal like individual like threat campaign. They've got a sample of what they consider their executive style report. One for intrusion analysis, or it's like maybe you're trying to do a threat actor highlight. So you can look at each of these, I would say, in the next chunk of the lab, take a second to dig through them. Those are there for your use. Again, that's desktop tools, CTI, templates, samples. You can copy paste these out, or if you want to pull fresh copies of them, you can get them from MITRE's actual GitHub. Jared just put the link into chat for you as well. It's a really awesome, again, free resource. So I would highly recommend you take advantage of it. And we can't talk about intelligence without really quickly talking about kind of sensitivity and information sharing. So a lot of the times you'll hear what's talked about as traffic light protocol, right? When we're writing reports, when we're disseminating information, we need to not only understand our audience, but the sensitivity of that information, who has the potential need to know, stuff like that. We typically see this represented in this format here of like a typical traffic stoplight, right? Red, yellow, green. There's also clear. So what it boils down to is red is basically no further disclosure, individual recipients only. So like this might be something like used specifically to someone on your team or something internal only. Maybe it's amber, it'll be a little bit more of a limited disclosure, a need to know. So this could be, say, maybe multiple teams or lines of business within your organization, but not outside of that. Green is kind of that more, think of it as like FOUO, like it's unclassified. It's not really sensitive information per se, but it's still stuff you don't just want posted on Twitter. We're thinking here more limited disclosure with the community. And you're just kind of being aware of who all is gaining access to that information. And then lastly, there's, TLP clear. This is basically anyone can have it, spread the word, write all the blog posts, put everything on Twitter. It's open sharing at that point. So again, clear, wide open, green, kind of within the community, amber, limited, sensitive, need to know. Red is literally just between you and whoever you give it to. And that's really what it boils down to from a traffic light protocol. I won't dive too deep into this and information sharing procedures. That's for another time. But I just wanted you guys to be aware of it since we were talking reporting and dissemination. Ooh, 4 minutes. Let's see how I can do here. There is one last bit of exercise. I'm going to skip this for now, guys. You can come back at the end and play with the authoring tools and the reports if you wish. So we went through this all. We need to put it to work. The post CTI, gathering, report writing, dissemination, what are the outcomes that can happen from the use of this CTI? And we can see this like from a day-to-day, this actionable intelligence from your teams, especially at say like the tactical level, can lead to say like new Sigma rules, new YAR rules, new detections being generated, all of those different routes. That's really what the information you guys are curating is going to be used for. That's the end goal, right? That's what you want to happen. You'll see it used a lot in hunting and IR. This should support being able to hunt your logs, looking at your alerts, understanding the behaviors you're seeing and how everything kind of intersects and seeing the bigger picture, right? Not just each individual log or event in a vacuum, but the whole kill chain. And then we can also use this information to really help us support, say, that whole purple team holistic perspective of doing things like running tabletop exercises, doing threat emulation, risk assessments. A lot of this data is really useful from this perspective. And it's something we truly believe the first time you're testing your tools, your security platforms, your incident response plans shouldn't be during an incident, right? So if you're already generating all this context rich data and providing a product to your organization, you should put it to use in these manners as well. Practice the way you're going to have to play when it's really game time, right? So we want to ensure you guys understand, like you've got a lot of different ways you can use this information, and that's really the end goal of what you're serving. Lastly, that feedback loop, feedback process, you want to ask them or ask your customers, your audience, like, is this data helpful? Is it useful? Do you need something more? Am I giving you too much? Would you like a different format? You want to always keep that in mind and try to develop and morph your product as it grows. It shouldn't realistically ever stay stagnant since this is a cyclical process. It could even change operation to operation. Maybe your security ops team wants a different format for day-to-day reporting as opposed to a specific format for during incident triage and handling. So you might have to develop a couple different ones over time. Luckily for you guys, you've got some resources now to help you do that and go through this whole process. Lastly, really cool, good quote. We just like to end and keep in here for you, give you a little insight from the bigger, wider world. If ignorant both of your enemy and yourself, you're certain to be in peril. That stands true just as much in cybersecurity as it did in warfare. You have to understand yourself, your context in the greater world, and the enemies you can potentially face. Otherwise, how are you going to secure anything or keep the stuff you care about protected? You can't. So with that, that will take us to our last bit of exercises. I know that's right at 4 o'clock. If you guys would like to work with the reporting and authoring tool, you can. I felt it was kind of fine to skip through that piece because the templates are really the kind of the meat on the bone there for this one. So as long as you guys got a copy of those, you should be in good shape. That is this workshop. We're right at 2 minutes till 1600. Did you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, anything you wanted to discuss? Hopefully you guys got some cool tidbits out of this today, maybe learned something new or something you can take back to your teams when it comes to threat intelligence. Thank you. Glad you appreciate it, Pedro. It's always fun to put on and fun to put together. It's really hard to do this in a concise manner to give everyone just enough to get started, but not overload you with all of the crazy theory and rhetoric and really diving into the psychological side of threat intelligence because there's so much more to it. We just broke the surface today, guys. All right, I will hang around here for a few more minutes if you guys want to play around in the lab and look at the reporting side of things. If not, you feel free to drop. Thanks for participating and hanging out with us today. I love the interaction. It is much appreciated. As always, we
Thanks,
do
everyone.
one of these pretty much monthly. Come hang out with us. Come check us out. We also have a live stream every other Thursday called Threat Thursday Live, where we talk through new and emerging threat stuff, things we've built, things we're seeing happening in the wild. And we'd love to have the interaction and hang out with you guys some more.
Yeah. We do have one tomorrow as well.
Oh, yeah, that's right. We do have a Threat Thursday Live
Yep.
tomorrow. Who are we talking about, Jared?
It is the Salt Typhoon malicious cab archives.
Awesome. So yeah, if you guys want to come out tomorrow, hang out with us on a live stream and learn a little bit more about some behaviors from Salt Typhoon, please come check it out. Let's see, a question from Serenity. Are there any other resources you'd recommend continue exploring? Honestly, anything from MITRE or the Center for Threat Informed Defense is a great starting point, Serenity. I would really look at those. I'm more of a big fan of figuring the process out and kind of like the taxonomy and the the words and the way we talk and we think in threat intelligence before you start diving into, say, tooling and frameworks. Sending up something like OpenCTI or MIST can be daunting at first. So I would say spend some time kind of reading through all of that. Another one I would give you, so here's actually it's a really good freebie. I think I've still got it up as a um, tab. Let's see. The Thor Collective Dispatch has been an awesome kind of newsletter. You don't have to subscribe, but they put out content pretty frequently. And it talks over anything and everything kind of threat informed defense or threat intelligence as a whole, um, detection engineering, a little bit of everything. It's a really cool resource. I'd say go check that out. All right. Well, if you guys don't have anything else for us, thanks for participating. I'll catch you all next time.